In today's video, we are going to discuss intuitive inspiration. Now, this conversation is stimulated by this quote here from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, in which he states, "The sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as the creative imagination. It has also been referred to as the receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. The flashes are sometimes called hunches or inspirations." One of the reasons why I decided to discuss this is to further encourage your intuition and also, you could say, sixth sense based inspiration. See, what we're realizing as we go through these discussions, and we want to further encourage, is that there's a lot more to reality than what we see in the five senses, or experience, I would say, via the five senses. And although we can form conclusions based on the five sensory data, it's important to recognize that we take a more of a, you could say, alternative perspective on reality, although I'm realizing now that this alternative perspective is really the true perspective when we recognize that everything here was sourced within. All artistic expression, all creativity, innovation was sourced within. Now, the innovator, the artist, the individual that expressed anything in this world, received ideas, hunches, and inspirations within. And there were certain states of mind or certain experiences in imagination or experiences here that stimulated the certain kind of thinking processes that brought forth that innovation, ideas, hunches, and inspiration. For example, in 2017, I decided that I was going to make flow a priority because I recognized that when I look back at my life, I found that when I was the most creative, inspired, joyous, at ease, and also the most productive, effective, innovative, was when I was in flow. So I made a commitment from that day onwards that I was going to make flow a priority. And although before I was kind of prioritizing, I made a decision that flow was going to be the way. And I went down the journey and I started to take inventory of the different aspects of my life and make changes so that I would continue to the best of my ability, maintain my flow. And there's different degrees of flow. There's the peak, being in the zone. There's more of a lighthearted, day-to-day approach, different degrees of flow. And we discussed this in the flow series. I'll put a link in the description to that. But I want to go a little deeper into this, and I want to talk about the sixth sense innovation, or the sixth sense intuitive inspiration that results in innovation or artistic expression. So what I found is that there were, as I continued this journey, certain environments, certain experiences, certain conversations, certain aspects of this five sensory world that seem to, for whatever the reason may be, stimulate this sixth sense connection. For example, many of you know that over the last few years I've been staying up north from Toronto in a place called Blue Mountains. I was moving around, but primarily I was staying up here. Now, one of my discoveries was this park. I discovered it in the summertime, actually. And I noticed that when I would run in this park, I would receive flashes, hunches, and inspirations in my mind, which I would infuse in my videos, share with my clients, and they would produce results. I would integrate in the things that I'm doing, and it would transform myself and my results. And these were ideas, hunches, and inspirations I never thought of before. But for some reason, when I would run at this particular park, I would get them. But I didn't question it. I just kept doing it because I know that if it works and it works well, then I'm just going to keep doing it and I'm going to make it a part of my life. So I started to run there in the evenings. As a matter of fact, yesterday I just arrived back because I'm snowboarding for another week. I went to the park and I sat there and I had some lunch. So what I would like to encourage is that there really are these experiences that we have. And I want you to follow the path that helped me as well, which is going on a self discovery journey of finding these particular experiences. And it's not just environments, it could be certain experiences. For example, I notice that when I drive back from Niagara Falls back to Toronto, because sometimes I do that drive back, I get a lot of ideas, hunches, and inspirations. And for whatever the reason may be, out of any place that I drive in the area, that one drive back seems to stimulate hunches and inspiration. Now, this is the kind of specificity that I would like you to encourage in yourself. Because if there are certain environments, certain experiences, certain conversations, certain information, certain this, certain that, that seems to, for whatever the reason may be, stimulate this sixth sense intuitive inspiration connection, then we want to encourage it. As I continued down the journey from 2017 to make flow a priority, I found myself actually prioritizing flow and creative inspiration so much that I was willing to make radical changes in my life, change everything in my life to encourage it. And I believe that relates over to what was shared here in the Kabbalion, in which they state, the all becomes involved or wrapped up in its creation. This process is believed by the Hermetists to have a correspondence to the mental process of an artist, writer, or inventor who becomes so wrapped up in his mental creation as to forget his own existence and who, for the time being, almost lives in his creation. Now, what I believe, at least from my experience, and thus I can only encourage what I experience in relation to artists, writers, inventors, entrepreneurs, and so forth, those that can benefit deeply from receiving these hunches, flashes, and inspirations within, because I recognize the effects of it, the results that are as a result of integrating those flashes, hunches, and inspirations, living life through those aspects. I found that this has become automatic. So that's why I put this under automatic decision. Could it be that after a period of doing this, over and over again, it becomes a habit? I mean, it started with the idea of, let's make flow a priority. Then it went into, what are all the different experiences that bring me into flow or break my flow? And I'm going to continue to encourage the experiences that bring me into the flow. And I'm going to make peace with or reconcile the experiences that break my flow, to the point where I would find these environments or life experiences or interests that I have that I would encourage. And as a result, I would feel exactly what they're referring to right here. I feel like I'm so wrapped up in what I'm doing that I forget my existence. It really does feel that way. And in those moments of forgetting your existence, you seem to receive flashes, hunches, inspirations, and so forth. So imagine yourself, if you're an artist, painting in that state of mind. Or if you're an entrepreneur, innovating from that state of mind. I believe that it's a natural state of mind. And the degree of authenticity, congruence, and representation of who you are would be accurately also, as discussed in the Kabbalion, a representation of living the all in the all. So let's talk about how we can make this happen. Because in my experiences, I found certain distinct clues and understandings that I want to tie into a simple model here. It's called the Kolb learning cycle. So I brought this up before. We've got concrete experience, or having an experience. Number 2, reflective observation, reflecting on your experience. Abstract conceptualization, figuring out, where else can we do this? And then number 4, active experimentation, doing that thing to see what happens. So here's how we apply this if we want to maintain a intuitive inspiration in relation to the sixth sense, which is really, we say this a lot, And I always aim to articulate it even more so to a deeper degree or from a different perspective so we can understand it more so. And so I can understand it myself even more so, because although this five sensory experience here seems very convincing as all that exists, we recognize that the all that exists is actually transcendent to this five sensory data and five sensory experience. And there is an infinite world within found via imagination. So the experiences that I'm encouraging, and I recommend you encourage as well, because if you want to innovate to a higher degree of who you really are, if you want to express that innovation through artistic expression, innovation, and so forth, then recognize that the sixth sense, intuition, is actually from within yourself guiding you to become that. And thus, you'll know the things that are ideal to you. You'll know it based on how you feel when you receive these hunches, inspirations. And as you continue to encourage it, your life changes. And more accurately put, you really become how you really want to live. And this will be expressed in whatever it is you do, what you say, what you express as far as your innovation goes, your art, science, whatever it is. This is related over to the alchemical great work. And we've discussed the spiritual alchemy process a few times. I'll put a link in the description to those videos, and we'll be discussing it further in the upcoming videos as we continue going deeper into understandings in this regard. So, first thing I would like you to do is be more present and aware as to the different experiences that you have, the different environments, perhaps certain individuals that you have conversations with, that you connect with, and so forth, that seem to stimulate hunches, inspirations that are transcendent to five sensory-based interpretations and hunches. We call that creative imagination. To understand it to a higher degree, I recommend watching the video I released a number of videos ago. I'll put a link in the description to that video, the creative imagination and synthetic imagination one. So note those things down. Make a study of it. It could be something like, every time I take this certain path, I walk this certain path in the park, that's where I get my ideas. Or every time I have a conversation with a certain person, that's where I get these ideas. Or every time I travel to a certain country, every time I travel, every time I go to the gym, every time this, every time that. Take an inventory of those things. You're having those experiences, and what we want is to encourage more of those experiences. Because as you become more encouraging of those experiences, what you'll notice is you'll automatically do those experiences. It'll become an automatic way of being. Number two, reflective observation. If we can find some commonalities between those experiences. For me, for example, nature seems to play a role. So when I look at where I get my hunches and inspiration, I realize that there is some nature component. Not always. Another one is conversations with people. I recognize that I get hunches and inspirations when I have certain types of conversation on certain kinds of topics, and I feel a certain way during those conversations. So I, through the reflective observation, found that it was beyond the words. It was how I felt or how I was feeling in those conversations. So I became more sensitive and aware to how I feel in conversations. Before, I thought it was challenging because I'm very much of a thinker, ENTJ and Myers-Briggs type of thinker. And so I practice developing a higher degree of presence to how I feel. It also could be certain kinds of music, for example, or maybe it's certain weather conditions. Whatever it is for you, find those things through reflective observation of those particular experiences. So first thing is take an inventory. As you go through your day-by-day journey, whatever it is you got to do, when you notice that you get hunches and inspirations, value those hunches and inspirations, but also pause and say, this particular experience or this conversation or this location or something like that. Note it down. Now, if you go back to that same experience or that same location and you experience it again, now you're onto something. And reflective observation can be looked at as what in relation to those experiences. Because remember, what we're looking to do is just get some ideas as to where we could do it elsewhere in other areas of our life. Maybe there's some commonality or similarity to different experiences in regards to the experience that stimulates creativity. As we always mention, the interpretation, the meaning is really from within. We're assigning meaning from within to the environment, to the experiences, and so forth. And what I encourage here is to align with the meaning that is already within you. That is what we would say your original meaning inherent within you of what is really connecting you to the sixth sense. Now, if you want to go really deep into this, we recognize we've always had this as children, and we seem to have clouded this connection through certain thinking patterns, belief systems, etc. And that meaning is still there deep within us as to what we truly desire, what we truly want to experience. And when we go through those experiences, we connect back to the sixth sense and receive the hunches and inspirations. So all we're doing is we're going deep to discover that within ourselves. And we can also benefit from the spiritual alchemy process, learning it and understanding it, because this helps us release from certain kinds of beliefs, interpretations, and thinking patterns that seems to create unnecessary resistance and friction to this intuition, inspiration, sixth sense. And on a side note, what we're doing is we're aiming to explain something that is so nuanced, very nuanced. It's a feeling. Intuition is a feeling which we can aim to articulate in words, but we're really tying deep into a certain sensation that when we're connected with it, we receive these hunches and inspirations, and we feel that in certain experiences. So that's the kind of reflective observation we want to have. Now, number 3, abstract conceptualization is really, in this regard, asking ourselves, and you ask yourself within, in regards to these kinds of experiences that I have, where I have the sixth sense connection, and these certain aspects that seem to be common in these other areas, where else can I get this kind of creativity or inspiration? Remember, what we're doing here is finding different ways to keep our inspiration at a peak. Through the abstract conceptualization, we find, by just asking the question, what are other experiences? What are other kinds of environments? What are other things that we can do that can further encourage this sixth sense? And then number 4, you go and do the thing. Go do those things. And by the way, here's where I find an opportunity between 3 and 4 here. So let's say a person finds, through concrete experience, some certain experiences that seem to stimulate the sixth sense or creative imagination. And they also find some commonalities between those experiences. And they get some ideas of where they could do it also. And so they decide that they're going to do it, but for some reason, there seems to be some internal resistance. Recognize that that's programming. That's an opportunity. We have discovered some programming within ourselves, and we have the power to change it by doing the subconscious mind work. Because we want those decisions to be automatic. Ideally, you want to have those concrete experiences, have the innovation-based ideas, hunches, inspiration, apply it, go into a reflective observation so you can see commonalities, come up with new ideas as a result of, to further encourage in this 5-sensory world, those experiences that further stimulate the sixth sense, creative imagination, and then just go and do it. But if for some reason there's some resistance to just doing it, then we want to see it as an opportunity. Because I found for me, this was, you could say, where the most fun was. Although now I look at it as fun, back then it seemed overwhelming because some of the programming that was within me was challenging to change. Because I was afraid of what was going to happen. But the thing that I found that always brought me into peace, and I could say this now through all those experiences, of all the changes that I've made in my life, in so many areas of my life, I recognize that everything actually worked out better than I thought it would. And I got into a deeper level of understanding and realization of who I am. I started to understand myself even more. I started to know things about myself and also honor the intuition to such a degree that I know, when it's intuition, So sometimes I get asked the question, how do you know if it's intuition? Well, by going through the process of experiential learning, the spiritual alchemy process, or something similar like that. Because the confusion is really the identification with certain kinds of thinking. See, I had this conversation with someone, and they said, well, I would love to do those things, but I'm afraid to do those things, or I find myself procrastinating to do those things. I said, well, apply the following. And by the way, we discussed what I shared with him in Sunday's video. I recommend watching it, which is essentially going to the end. So what this means is go to a point in your life, or remember a point in your life where you are about to do something and you felt afraid, but you did it. And then after you did it, you felt great. You realized things about yourself. You realized that it actually played out even better than you were thinking based on the programming, how it would play out. And so he would go into that state of mind by imagining it. And I say, what I do is I just remind myself that that is exactly how I'm going to feel through the active experimentation, by encouraging the very things that bring me these kinds of realization. And then when I get there, I realize why I did it. And then also, as a result of it, it becomes a habit. And then this way of living becomes automatic. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and encourage this with an affirmation. We could say, I recognize that there are certain experiences that I have in life that encourage flashes, hunches, inspiration, which I can express through my innovation, artistic expression, and thus I encourage those experiences more so. I'm able to discover more of these kinds of experiences, understand the aspects of the experience that have commonalities, tie them into other experiences, and commit to doing those experiences as I find myself automatically involving myself in those experiences to further encourage the sixth sense, intuitive, innovative connection that is always there within myself. I understand that decision is automatic now as a result of honoring what is truly in harmony and in contribution to who I am, which is transcendent to the five sensory experience, which is discovered within via the sixth sense and expressed as the art of intuitive living. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.